I'm going to take you guys on a journey with me. In 2014, as I sat in a dark, windowless room in an inpatient psych ward, I wondered to myself, how did I get here? And who was this person I had become? My name is Paquita Purnell, and I am a domestic abuse survivor, and I also survived depression. Sitting in that dark, windowless room, I felt the lowest I've ever felt in my life. And I wondered to myself, is this it? Is this what life's supposed to be like? I struggled to find the will to go on. But I am a woman of faith. I had the greatest grandmother. Her name was Elizabeth. She was an evangelist, and she taught me all about God, and she really lived her life for him. So Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and he died so that I could live life more abundantly. But sitting in this dark room was not living life more abundantly. See, although I attended church regularly and I served faithfully in my roles at church, I stopped communicating with God. My home life had become very chaotic after years of trauma from domestic abuse, the depression that follows, the shame that follows, the hurt, the anger that ensues in you. You get to that point where it's like, who is that person? Who are you? How did I let somebody tell me what my worth was? But God is amazing, and he's always right on time. In that dark room, a group of women from my church came, and they came into that darkness, and they stood around me and surrounded me, and they began to pray, which in turn made me start to pray for myself. It's just like, wow. Lord, when I think you couldn't hear me, you heard me. You sent these people to me to empower me, to give me my strength back. And from that day on, I returned my focus back to God. And I just allowed him to do the work. You have to allow him to do the work. But with that being said, faith without works is dead. So you have to do the work too. And in Matthew 18 and 20, it says, where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I am in the midst. And that's what that group of women did for me. And I thank God for them every day. Also, when he gave me that strength back, he also showed me how to cope with the depression, to cope with the history and the years of abuse. I started crafting. I've always loved crafting. I started in 2010. At the time, my daughter was 3 years old, my oldest. And it was Easter time, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do something for my baby. I'm going to go get her an Easter basket. She knows what Easter is about. She knows about God, and she knows about the Easter bunny. That's how we do. So I go into a department store, and I'm looking at the baskets, and I'm like, oh, I'm about to spend $20 on 3 pieces of candy and toys she ain't going to play with. no, I'm not doing it. So I took the $20 and I created a basket for her. She's very girly. She loved tutus. She loved hair bows, things like that. And I filled that basket for her. And eventually, the hobby turned into a full-fledged business. And thank you. Full-fledged business. Thank you. And my mother and I started creating custom gift baskets for our church's guest speakers that were coming from out of town. And it's like, wow, this is really taking off. And we started doing vendor shows and things like that as well. And my home life improved as well, you know. And in the span of 23 months, we welcomed 2 new babies into our family, much to the delight of our daughter and the dismay. She was like, that's enough. I don't need any more brothers and sisters, thank you. So, but life goes in cycles. And then the home life started to deteriorate again. Why? Life got busy. I stopped communicating with God again. And I was like, okay, I gotta do something, I have to do something. So one day, my children came to me in the midst of the chaos after a chaotic event happened. And they was like, Mom, why do you stay? And I was like, to look in those faces and not be able to explain. I knew in that moment that they deserved better. So I packed my things and I moved back to Janesville with my family. And in that moment, I took my power back. I took my power back from all of those previous relationships, all of those things that were just holding me down. And I moved into my own apartment eventually. And this is all during the pandemic. So imagine being in the house with a 12-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 1.5-year-old during the pandemic, listening to Baby Shark all day. Yes, my son loved him some Baby Shark. But eventually, I started to go to therapy. I also began to pray again. And now I am the owner of 2 businesses. Thank you. And in 2021, I opened a brick and mortar location in the Uptown Janesville Mall, and I collaborated with 16 other Black and Latino businesses, and we rocked that out for 2 years. Thank you. And then after the tragic passing of our founder, Vicki Lynn, I became the committee lead for Black Women in Business Beloit. And we host a successful expo every year since 2019. I also met her in 2019. And you always have to have that person that's gonna pour back into you when you're at your lowest. And she was that person for me. She would call, she would check on me, she would encourage me, and you know, I was very quiet, very shy, and in our first expo I ever did, I was sitting behind my vendor table, kind of just like, people walking by and not really saying anything. And she came over to me, she was like, you know what? You doper than you realize. And I was like, I don't think so. But she definitely poured into me. So you definitely have to have people like that. Research shows that it takes an average of 7 times for a domestic abuse victim to finally leave. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men will experience some form of domestic violence or abuse by an intimate partner. So it's not just happening to us ladies, it's happening to men too. I say all of this to tell you that you have to take your power back. So don't give up and continue to rise and thrive. Thank you.